A lonely cowboy thought love was over, until a mail-order bride refused to leave. The sun rose slowly over the red plains of Mesa Colony, spilling golden light across the jagged cliffs and dusty fields. The wind whispered over the rocks, carrying the scent of iron and dry earth. Jace, a tall man with broad shoulders and calloused hands, stood at the edge of his small farm, squinting at the horizon. He adjusted the brim of his wide hat, shielding his eyes from the glaring sun. Another long day awaited him. Jace's farm was not large. It had a few fields of hardy crops that could survive the harsh environment, a small pen for his livestock, and a modest solar-powered home. But it was enough for him. Enough to survive, enough to keep busy, and enough to hide from the loneliness that seemed to stretch across the plains like a shadow. He sighed as he walked toward the barn, his boots crunching on the red gravel. Inside, his hover horse, Dusty, neighed softly. Jace patted the sleek metallic body of the creature, grateful for the companionship. Dusty wasn't alive in the way humans understood life, but in the quiet world of Red Mesa, it felt like the only friend who understood him. The sound of a distant shuttle caught his attention. He looked up, shielding his eyes against the sun. There, a tiny speck of metal glinted against the sky. The mail shuttles rarely came out here. Supplies usually arrived once a month, and most colonists preferred the central hub to the outskirts. Jace had chosen this remote patch for a reason. He liked the silence, the freedom to work alone. But lately, the silence had started to feel heavy, like a blanket too thick to move under. Jace returned to his house and checked the small terminal on the wall. A message was waiting. It was a holographic projection flickering slightly. Mail-order bride introduction, it said in neat letters. Jace rubbed his eyes. He hadn't expected this. Years ago, he thought he had closed the door on love forever. His wife had died in a mining accident when the colony was new, and the memory of her laughter still haunted him, warm and sad all at once. Since then, he had learned to live alone, to rely on no one but Dusty and his own two hands. But curiosity won over caution. He activated the hologram. A woman appeared, smiling confidently. Her hair was dark and her eyes shone with a strange intelligence. She introduced herself as Myra. She spoke of adventure, partnership, and starting anew in the frontier colonies. She wasn't timid or shy. She was bold, confident, and she seemed real. Jace leaned back, scratching his chin. "A mail-order bride, huh?" he muttered. "Funny. I didn't think I'd ever see one out here." He looked around the room, the walls lined with tools and maps of the colony. For a moment he wondered if maybe, just maybe, having someone else around wouldn't be so bad. But the thought quickly faded. He had survived years alone. He didn't need anyone. Days passed. The mail shuttle finally arrived, carrying supplies and a small crate labeled for Jace. Inside was a holocom device that Myra had chosen herself. There was no shuttle assigned for her arrival yet, but she had insisted on sending a preliminary message. She asked questions about the farm, about Jace's life, about his routines. At first, Jace ignored most of it. He had always been careful, private, but something about Myra's messages kept him reading. She noticed the smallest details, like the arrangement of tools in the barn, the way he organized his crops, and even the way Dusty reacted to the wind. It was strange. Someone had paid attention to his life, really noticed it. Finally, a week later, the shuttle came. Jace was outside, tending the crops when the small craft descended, stirring up red dust. He wiped his hands on his pants and walked to the landing pad. The hatch opened, and there she was. Myra stepped out confidently, holding a small pack of personal items. She scanned the farm with wide eyes, not in fear but in wonder. She smiled at Jace. "So this is your home," she said. Her voice was warm and steady, a strange comfort in the vast emptiness. Jace tipped his hat. "It's not much," he said, "but it's mine." Myra laughed softly. "It's perfect," she said. And for some reason, Jace felt a small tug in his chest. Days turned into weeks. Myra proved she was no ordinary partner. She was curious, brave, and surprisingly clever with the land. She studied the local plants, learned quickly how to repair broken machines, and even found ways to improve the farm's efficiency. Jace watched her with a mix of suspicion and admiration. He had expected someone passive, someone who would simply follow his instructions. Myra did nothing of the sort. She asked questions, challenged ideas, and made suggestions that often worked better than his old methods. It was exhausting at first. He didn't like being questioned. He didn't like admitting that she might know more than he did. But slowly, he began to see the value in her presence. Life on Red Mesa had been lonely, repetitive, and sometimes unbearable. Myra brought color to the monotony, laughter to the silence. One evening they sat outside the house, watching the twin suns dip below the horizon. The sky turned orange and pink, reflecting off the cliffs. Myra leaned back, her hands behind her head. "It's beautiful," she said. Jace nodded, silent. Words had always been hard for him, and they still were, but he felt something shift inside. Maybe it wasn't just the beauty of the sky. Maybe it was the strange, growing feeling that he wasn't alone anymore. The first hint of danger came quietly. A minor sandstorm blew across the plains, shaking the farm and making Dusty whinny nervously. Myra didn't panic. She helped Jace secure the equipment, tie down the supplies, and even shield the small garden from damage. "That was impressive," Jace admitted when the storm passed. "Most people would have run for cover," Myra smiled. "I'm not most people," she said simply. And for the first time, Jace realized that this was going to be different. She wasn't here to follow him. She was here to live, to learn, to survive, just like him. As the weeks passed, the two of them settled into a rhythm. Myra learned to ride Dusty across the plains, help plant crops, and even started experimenting with small inventions that made daily chores easier. Jace began to feel a strange pride in teaching her, in learning from her, in sharing the life he had built alone for so long. And then, one quiet night, as the twin moons rose over the cliffs, Myra spoke a simple sentence that Jace would remember forever. "I don't want to leave," she said. Jace froze. He had expected her to stay for a season, maybe two. He had expected the mail-order system to pull her back, to send her on to another lonely settler. But now, hearing her words, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Relief. Surprise and hope. The stars twinkled above them, silent witnesses to the beginning of something new. Jace realized that life on Red Mesa would never be the same again. For the first time in years, he didn't feel entirely alone. The mornings on Red Mesa had a calm rhythm, broken only by the occasional whistling wind or the distant hum of a supply shuttle. Jace woke early, as usual, checking the solar panels and inspecting the small herd of hover horses grazing nearby. Dusty nickered as he approached, and Jace gave the machine a gentle pat. Life had a quiet, predictable pattern, just the way he liked it, but Myra was different. From the moment she arrived, she had injected energy into the routine, and Jace found it both refreshing and frustrating. This morning, she was already outside, kneeling in the soil with a small handheld scanner. "These crops are dehydrating faster than usual," she said without looking up. "The irrigation flow from the reservoir is inconsistent." Jace frowned, walking over. "It's fine. They'll survive. They always do." "They could survive, yes," Myra said, still examining the soil. "But we could make it better. If we adjust the flow and use these nutrient packs, it might double the yield." Jace crossed his arms, trying not to show irritation. He had managed this farm for years without anyone suggesting improvements. Change was uncomfortable. "I don't need the double yield, I need survival." Myra looked up, her eyes sparkling with determination. "And I want efficiency. We don't just survive here, Jace. We thrive." Her words lingered in the air. Jace had lived with the bare minimum for so long that thriving seemed almost like a foreign idea. He wanted to tell her that life on Red Mesa was enough, but instead he muttered, "We'll see." Dusty stamped his metallic hooves impatiently, as if sensing the tension. Myra laughed softly. "Don't worry, he's on our side." That afternoon, Myra joined Jace on the plains to check the livestock. She rode Dusty with confidence, gripping the reins tightly as the wind whipped her hair around her face. Jace rode beside her, his hands steady on the reins. "You ride well," he admitted, a hint of admiration in his voice. "I had a good teacher," she replied, "but don't think I won't surpass you soon." Jace snorted. "We'll see about that." The ride took them past a rocky ridge where the horizon stretched endlessly, painted with hues of red, orange, and gold. Myra pointed to a cluster of unusual plants near a dry creek. "Those are native to this planet," she said. "They can hold water for days. If we transplant a few near the crops, they could help with irrigation." Jace paused, examining the plants. They looked strange, almost alien, with long tendrils and glowing tips, but Myra was right. It could work. He nodded slowly, impressed despite himself. "All right," he said. "We'll try it." Despite their growing understanding, tension still bubbled beneath the surface. Myra had ideas and Jace had experience. They both wanted the same thing, success on Red Mesa, but their paths to get there were different. That evening, Myra prepared dinner in the small kitchen, humming softly. Jace watched her from across the room, leaning against the counter. He didn't often cook, and he certainly didn't talk much while someone else was doing it. Yet her presence made the space feel warmer, less lonely. "Do you always cook this much?" Jace asked, curiosity breaking through his usual reserve. "I cook what I can," Myra said, plating a simple meal of protein bars and rehydrated vegetables. "Life out here is too short for bland food." Jace raised an eyebrow but smiled faintly. "I suppose you're right." Dinner was quiet at first. Jace ate slowly, thinking, while Myra moved about, tidying the kitchen. After a while, she spoke again. "Do you ever miss companionship?" she asked gently. Jace looked up, surprised by the question. He had spent years avoiding it, pretending he didn't want anyone around. "Sometimes," he admitted quietly, "but it's safer this way." "Safer, yes," Myra agreed, "but not better. Life isn't meant to be safe all the time. It's meant to be lived, fully." Her words settled in his mind, uncomfortable yet strangely inspiring. He didn't reply, letting the silence carry the conversation. The next few days tested their partnership further. Myra had begun to reorganize the farm equipment, labeling tools and creating a small inventory system. Jace, a creature of habit, found himself muttering under his breath, annoyed at the disruption. "Change is uncomfortable," Myra said one morning as she adjusted the layout of the tool shed. "But it helps us grow." Jace grunted. "I'm growing just fine without changing everything I touch." Myra smiled knowingly. "You'll thank me later." And strangely enough, he began to realize she was right. When he tried her new system, the work went smoother. Tasks that had taken hours now took less than half the time. Slowly, he found himself relying on her suggestions, even appreciating them. One afternoon, they encountered another challenge. The water supply to the farm was lower than usual, and the reservoir pumps were not responding. Myra immediately grabbed her portable diagnostic kit and began analyzing the issue. Jace watched, impressed by her speed and confidence. "Looks like a minor blockage," she said after a few minutes. "We can reroute the secondary channel and use the natural runoff from the ridge. It won't be perfect, but it will keep the crops alive." Jace nodded, silently grateful. "Lead the way." They worked together, moving hoses, digging small trenches, and adjusting the flow. The sun was high and sweat dripped down their faces, but neither complained. They were too focused on the task at hand. By the time they finished, the sun was dipping behind the cliffs, casting long shadows across the plains. Myra wiped her brow, smiling with satisfaction. "See, thriving, not just surviving." Jace laughed softly. "You're impossible. And you're stubborn," she replied with a wink. "But I like that about you." For the first time in years, Jace felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the desert sun. He realized that life on Red Mesa, once lonely and harsh, was slowly becoming enjoyable. Yet, despite the growing bond, friction still remained. Myra's curiosity often led them into situations that Jace found risky. One morning, she wanted to explore a nearby alien rock formation, claiming it might contain resources or water channels useful for the farm. Jace shook his head. "It's unstable. We could get stuck or worse." Myra's eyes sparkled. "Or we could discover something incredible. You can't just hide from possibilities forever." Jace hesitated, torn between caution and curiosity. Finally, he sighed. "All right, but we stick together and we're careful." As they approached the rocks, Myra's excitement was contagious. She pointed out unusual minerals and strange plant growths, jotting notes in her datapad. Jace found himself smiling despite the cautious approach he maintained. By the time they returned to the farm, the sun had set completely, and the twin moons cast a soft silver glow over the plains. Myra laughed as she recounted the discoveries of the day, and Jace realized he had laughed genuinely too, a sound he hadn't made in years. That night as they prepared for bed, Myra turned to Jace. "You know," she said softly, "I think this place has more to offer than we realize, and so do we if we work together." Jace nodded quietly. He couldn't put it into words, but he felt the truth of her statement deep in his bones. He had spent so long alone, surviving in the harshness of Red Mesa, that he had forgotten what it meant to truly live. Myra reminded him of that. As he lay down to sleep, Jace thought about the coming days. Challenges would come, they always did on Red Mesa, but for the first time he felt ready to face them. Not alone, but with someone who could match him in strength, curiosity, and determination. The night was quiet, peaceful. The wind whispered over the plains, carrying the soft hum of distant alien wildlife. Dusty stood silently by the barn, and Jace closed his eyes, letting the comfort of companionship settle over him. Myra had refused to leave, and in doing so she had brought life back to his lonely farm. For Jace, the days of solitude were ending. And for the first time, he looked forward to the future, not with fear, but with hope. The morning on Red Mesa began like any other, with the twin suns rising slowly over the jagged cliffs. But the wind carried a strange chill, whispering through the sparse vegetation and rattling the edges of Jace's small farmhouse. Dusty pawed the ground nervously, and Jace frowned. There was something different about the air today. Myra, always quick to notice the little changes in their environment, came running from the fields, datapad in hand. "Jace, the atmospheric readings are off. The wind speed is increasing faster than usual. We might be facing a sandstorm." Jace looked toward the horizon. The sky was bright, but a faint reddish haze seemed to be creeping in from the distance. Sandstorms were common on Red Mesa, but the readings Myra had pulled up suggested it could be stronger than anything they had faced before. "All right," Jace said, his voice steady, though his mind raced. "We'll secure everything. Start with the crops and livestock. Myra, we'll need your help with the farm equipment." Myra nodded, already moving efficiently. She and Jace worked in tandem, their bodies moving with practiced precision. Jace tied down the hover horses, checking each harness and saddle, while Myra secured the equipment sheds and double-checked the irrigation channels. They spoke little, their actions communicating more than words ever could. By midday, the storm hit. A wall of red dust and debris rolled across the plains, reducing visibility to near zero. The wind screamed through the cliffs, shaking buildings and tossing small rocks across the fields. Dusty whinnied, stamping nervously, and Jace held his ground, guiding the hover horses toward the safety of their pen. Myra followed closely, securing the gates and reinforcing the structures with temporary supports. "This is worse than I expected," Jace shouted over the roar of the wind. "And we'll manage it," Myra yelled back. "Focus on the animals." Hours passed like a blur of sand, wind, and tension. Jace and Myra worked tirelessly, relying on each other to keep everything intact. They communicated through gestures, shouted instructions, and the occasional nod of acknowledgement. Despite the storm's fury, there was a strange rhythm to their teamwork, a trust that had grown silently over weeks of shared labor. When the storm finally subsided, the world was transformed. Red Mesa was coated in a thin layer of dust, the crops had suffered some damage, and several minor structures were partially collapsed. Jace surveyed the damage with a mixture of relief and frustration. "We made it," he said quietly, more to himself than to Myra. "Yes," she agreed, brushing dust from her hair. "But we have work to do." Together, they began assessing the damage. Myra immediately started cataloging the crops that were salvageable and identifying plants that could be replanted. Jace focused on repairing fences and shelters, but he found himself relying heavily on Myra's insights. She suggested using native plants with natural water retention to protect the crops, and she even designed a makeshift windbreak from spare materials. "You think too much," Jace said, shaking his head with a wry smile. "But it works." "I've been told that before," Myra replied, smiling back. By evening, they had stabilized the farm. The crops that could be saved were protected, the livestock was safe, and the basic structures had been repaired. They collapsed together on a small ridge overlooking the farm, exhausted but satisfied. "You know," Myra said, staring at the orange and red horizon, "I didn't think I'd enjoy surviving a storm." Jace chuckled softly. "Neither did I," Myra laughed, a sound that blended with the quiet whispers of the wind. "I think we make a good team, don't you?" Jace hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, we do." For the first time, the boundaries between them felt blurred. They were no longer teacher and student, master and helper, or even solitary individuals sharing a farm. They were partners, facing the harshness of Red Mesa together. And in that partnership, a deep respect was forming, a connection that went beyond words. The following days brought more discoveries. While repairing a partially buried irrigation channel, Myra noticed unusual plant growth near a rock formation that had been hidden by the storm. The plants glowed faintly in the dusk light, their colors shifting in a way that suggested something unique about the soil and minerals in that area. "These are native to this planet," Myra explained excitedly, examining the leaves with her scanner. "They store water far more efficiently than anything we've planted. If we transplant them near the crops, it could revolutionize irrigation here." Jace nodded slowly. He had learned to trust her instincts, and he recognized the value in her observation. "All right," he said. "Let's move them." The task took hours. They worked side by side, carefully uprooting the glowing plants and placing them in shaded containers. Myra's hands were steady, precise, while Jace used his strength to carry heavier loads. Together, they turned a discovery into a practical solution for their farm. That night, after the sun had set and the twin moons lit the landscape, they sat around a small fire Myra had started. The air was cool, and the scent of dust and soil mingled with the faint aroma of rehydrated vegetables she had cooked. "You've changed a lot since you arrived," Jace said quietly, tossing a small stick into the fire. "Not just the farm, me too, I guess." Myra looked at him, curiosity in her eyes. "How so?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I've been alone for so long, thinking I didn't need anyone, but now I see that maybe I do." Myra smiled softly. "It's not weakness to want company, it's human. And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Even out here in the middle of nowhere, humans find a way to connect, to survive, and even thrive." Jace nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in years. "You're right," he said. The next morning, Myra suggested exploring an abandoned alien structure near the ridge. According to her scans, it was intact and could contain useful technology or resources. Jace was hesitant. He had always been cautious about venturing too far into unknown structures, but he trusted Myra's judgment. "All right," he said reluctantly. "We go together, but we stay careful." The structure loomed in the distance, partially covered in sand and dust. Its smooth, metallic walls reflected the morning light, giving it an almost mystical appearance. As they approached, Myra's excitement was evident. "This could help us," she said, scanning the entrance. "Alien tech might improve our water systems or even protect the crops better from storms." Jace nodded, still cautious. He followed Myra inside, noting the intricate designs on the walls. Strange symbols and markings covered the interior, and soft hums resonated through the hallways, almost like the structure itself was alive. Myra examined a small control panel, her fingers dancing over the holographic interface. "It's partially functional," she said. "I can reroute power and maybe bring some systems online." Jace watched, amazed. Myra had an uncanny ability to understand technology, even alien technology, in ways he couldn't. "How do you know how to do that?" he asked. Myra shrugged. "I like puzzles, and I like challenges." They spent the day exploring the structure, discovering storage rooms filled with preserved seeds, water filtration devices, and energy cells. Myra explained how they could integrate these devices into their farm, making it more resilient against storms and other environmental hazards. By sunset, they had mapped the structure and gathered all the resources they could safely carry. They returned to the farm, their backpacks heavy but their spirits light. For Jace, it was a revelation. Humans had survived and thrived on this planet not just through strength, but through ingenuity, curiosity, and cooperation, and Myra embodied all of that. That night, as they watched the moons rise, Myra turned to Jace. "I think we could do more," she said softly. "Together, we could make this farm a real model for the colony. We could show what humans can do, even out here." Jace smiled, feeling pride and hope mingling in his chest. "I like that idea," he said. "We'll do it." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the harsh yet beautiful world of Red Mesa, Jace realized something profound. Survival was important, yes, but thriving, growing, and connecting with others was what made life meaningful. Myra had forced him to see that, and he was grateful. For the first time in years, Jace didn't feel the weight of loneliness pressing down on him. Together, he and Myra were strong, capable, and full of potential. The storm had tested them, the alien structure had challenged them, and through it all, they had grown closer. Red Mesa was no longer just a lonely frontier. It was a place of possibility, and with Myra by his side, Jace felt ready to embrace it. The mornings on Red Mesa had started to feel less lonely, more vibrant. Jace and Myra had settled into a steady rhythm, their teamwork seamless. Yet beneath the surface, something deeper was growing. The shared challenges and successes were forming a bond neither of them had expected. That day, the twin suns rose over the horizon, painting the red cliffs in warm gold. Jace stepped out of the small farmhouse, stretching his arms as Dusty nickered beside him. Myra was already outside, examining the crops they had replanted after the last storm. "You're up early," Jace said, smiling faintly. "I couldn't sleep," Myra replied. "I was thinking about how we could improve the irrigation again." Jace shook his head, amused. "You never stop thinking." Myra looked at him with a playful smile. "That's why you like having me around, isn't it?" Jace grunted, unsure whether to admit it. Instead, he mounted Dusty, gesturing for Myra to follow. Together, they rode to the fields, discussing ways to use the alien plants they had discovered to help the crops survive even the harshest conditions. Their conversations were no longer just about survival. They shared stories of their past, laughter, and even small secrets they had never told anyone. Myra told Jace about growing up on another colony, about her curiosity for technology and exploration. Jace shared memories of his wife, his fears, and the long years of solitude. "You know," Myra said softly one afternoon as they worked, "I never thought I'd enjoy life on a frontier like this. It's hard, yes, but also full of possibilities. Jace looked at her, meeting her eyes. It's not easy, he admitted. But having someone who understands makes it better. Myra's eyes softened. I feel the same. As the days passed, their bond deepened. Myra's suggestions and inventions were transforming the farm. They installed a small water filtration system from the alien structure's technology, creating a steady supply even during dry spells. Jace watched her work, impressed not just by her skill, but by her patience and determination. You make it look easy, he said one evening as she adjusted the system. It's all about understanding, Myra replied, learning the land, the tech, and each other. Her words struck a chord with Jace. For the first time, he realized that love was not just about companionship. It was about respect, trust, and growth together. Myra had refused to leave, and through her presence, she was teaching him to open his heart again. One day, while testing a new irrigation channel, Myra slipped on the rocky terrain. Jace caught her instantly, holding her close to steady her. Their eyes met, and for a long moment, words were unnecessary. The wind whispered around them, carrying the scent of the desert and the faint glow of the alien plants they had planted nearby. You okay? Jace asked, his voice low. Myra nodded, her heart racing slightly. Thanks to you. That small moment lingered in both of their minds for days. It was not dramatic or loud, but it planted a seed of something stronger, an unspoken connection that went beyond friendship or partnership. The colony was noticing their progress. Nearby settlers, inspired by the farm's resilience and ingenuity, started visiting Jace and Myra to learn from them. Myra's ideas, combined with Jace's experience, created a model of human adaptability that was beginning to attract attention. One morning, a young settler approached the farm with a small drone. I heard about your water system, he said nervously. Could you show me how it works? Jace exchanged a glance with Myra. She smiled encouragingly. Of course, we're happy to share, she said. Together, they guided the settler through the system, explaining the alien technology integration and demonstrating the plant's water retention capabilities. Jace realized that Myra's presence was not only transforming his life, but the lives of others. Humans could thrive even in the harshest places if they worked together. Later, Myra and Jace walked along the ridge, the twin moons casting silver light over the plains. Myra stopped, looking out over the horizon. I've never felt more alive, she said softly. Being here working with you, seeing what humans can do, I feel like we're capable of anything. Jace nodded, his gaze following hers. I feel the same. I never thought life could feel this full. Myra turned to him, her eyes bright. You know, I don't want to leave. I wasn't sure at first, but now this is where I belong. Jace felt warmth spread through his chest. And I don't want you to leave either, he admitted, a rare softness in his voice. For the first time, words felt enough. They didn't need grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Their lives, intertwined through shared labor, challenges, and trust, were proof enough. The following days brought new projects. Myra suggested experimenting with small greenhouses, combining earth crops with native plants. Jace helped build the structures, his hands moving with precision as Myra guided the design. Each greenhouse was a testament to human ingenuity, combining knowledge, curiosity, and adaptation. During these long hours of work, they laughed, shared stories, and slowly, unconsciously, leaned on each other for comfort and support. Jace noticed how her laughter lifted the weight of the harsh frontier, how her ideas sparked innovation, and how her presence made even the toughest work enjoyable. One evening, after a long day, they sat on the ridge again, watching the twin moons rise. Myra leaned against Jace's shoulder, a simple gesture that felt profoundly intimate. You know, she said softly, I think humans are stronger than we realize. We adapt, we learn, and we support each other. That's why we thrive. Jace smiled, feeling pride and gratitude. Yeah, he said, and having the right partner makes all the difference. Myra turned to look at him, eyes shining. "I think we're that for each other." The farm flourished under their care. The alien plants helped crops survive dry spells, the water systems ensured sustainability, and the greenhouses allowed them to experiment with new crops. Settlers from other colonies began visiting regularly, eager to learn from their successes. Jace and Myra became leaders not because of authority, but because of ingenuity, teamwork, and compassion. One night, as they prepared for bed, Myra spoke again, her voice soft and thoughtful. "You've changed, Jace. You've opened yourself up to more than just survival. You've embraced life and people." Jace chuckled quietly. "I had a good teacher," she smiled, "and a willing student." The next morning, a small shipment arrived from the central hub. Among the supplies were letters from friends and settlers who had heard of the farm's success. Jace opened one, reading aloud. It praised their ingenuity, their teamwork, and their resilience in the face of Red Mesa's harsh environment. Myra listened, a small smile playing on her lips. "You see," she said, "humans notice when others do well. They learn, they grow, and they support each other. That's what makes us strong." Jace nodded, looking out over the farm. He thought about the storms they had survived, the alien structure they had explored, and the innovations they had implemented together. Each challenge had tested them, shaped them, and ultimately brought them closer. As the twin moons rose that night, casting their silver light over the plains, Jace and Myra sat together in quiet reflection. There was no need for dramatic declarations or grand gestures. Their bond was evident in every action, every shared task, every look of mutual understanding. And in that quiet, simple moment, Jace realized something he had long forgotten. Love did not always arrive in dramatic bursts. Sometimes it grew slowly, patiently, through shared effort, trust, and respect. And this love, this partnership, was stronger than any storm Red Mesa could throw at them. For the first time, Jace felt fully alive, fully connected. Myra had refused to leave, not because of duty, but because of choice. And through that choice, she had brought life, hope, and love back to his lonely world. Red Mesa was no longer just a harsh frontier. It was a place of possibility, creativity, and human triumph. And together, Jace and Myra were ready to embrace it, side by side, heart to heart, and mind to mind. The farm thrived, the settlers learned, and the stars above shone brightly, promising a future full of challenges, discoveries, and shared victories. And through it all, the bond between Jace and Myra continued to grow, strong, steady, and unbreakable. The first light of dawn stretched across Red Mesa, painting the jagged cliffs in shades of gold and crimson. Jace stood outside the farmhouse, Dusty grazing quietly nearby and breathed in the crisp air. The farm was alive with movement, plants glistening with morning dew, irrigation channels humming softly, and alien crops shimmering faintly in the sunlight. Myra joined him, carrying a datapad with updates on the crops and the small greenhouses they had built together. She smiled at him, her eyes reflecting the bright horizon. "Everything looks good," she said. "The water filtration system is holding steady, and the new irrigation channels are functioning perfectly." Jace nodded, feeling pride swell in his chest. It wasn't just pride in the farm or the technology. They had built something extraordinary together. It was pride in the human spirit, in what humans could accomplish even in the harshest conditions. "Looks like we've done more than survive," he said. "We've created something that will last." Myra stepped closer. "And others will see it. Humans learn from each other. Our success could inspire the whole colony." Jace glanced toward the distant settlement, where tiny figures moved across the red plains. Settlers had begun visiting more frequently, asking questions, observing the systems, and learning from the innovations Jace and Myra had implemented. Humans were resilient, adaptable, and curious, and they were sharing that knowledge. Later that morning, a small shuttle landed near the farm, bringing a group of settlers from a neighboring outpost. They stepped out cautiously, their eyes wide with curiosity. Myra greeted them warmly. "Welcome," she said. "We're happy to show you what we've learned here." Jace observed quietly, watching as Myra explained the water filtration system, the integration of alien plants, and the improvements in crop yields. The settlers listened intently, asking questions and taking notes. Jace realized that Myra had a gift for teaching, for showing others how to adapt and thrive in an environment that had once seemed impossible. After the demonstration, the settlers began helping with small tasks around the farm. Some repaired fences, others tended to the crops, and a few assisted with the greenhouses. Myra and Jace worked alongside them, guiding and advising, but also learning from the fresh ideas and energy the settlers brought. During a break, Myra turned to Jace. "Do you see? This is what it means to inspire others. Humans thrive not just by surviving, but by teaching, sharing, and learning together." Jace nodded, a quiet smile on his face. "I see it now," he said, "and it feels good." As the day passed, Jace and Myra discussed plans for further expansion. Myra suggested building more greenhouses to test combinations of earth and alien crops. Jace proposed improving the irrigation channels to accommodate the growing demand. Together, they sketched out ideas, using the rugged landscape as their blueprint. By afternoon, they paused on a ridge overlooking the farm, the twin moons now faintly visible in the sky above. Myra leaned against Jace's shoulder, her eyes following the patterns of light and shadow across the plains. "You know," she said softly, "I never imagined life on Red Mesa could be this, full of potential, and not just for us but for everyone." Jace looked at her, noticing the determination and hope shining in her eyes. "Humans are stronger than I realized," he admitted. "We adapt, we build, and we help each other. I see that now more clearly than ever." Myra smiled. "And together we can do even more." The colony is only beginning to see what humans are capable of. That evening, as they returned to the farmhouse, a small group of settlers approached, carrying supplies and tools. They had come to help with a new greenhouse Myra had designed, eager to participate and learn. Jace and Myra accepted the assistance gratefully, knowing that human collaboration was the key to survival and progress on this unforgiving planet. While working, Jace observed Myra guiding the settlers, showing them the precise methods for planting, watering, and integrating alien plants. She moved with confidence, patience, and warmth, and he realized how much humans could achieve when knowledge was shared. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the settlers gathered around the farm, sitting together and sharing stories. Laughter echoed across the plains, a sound that had been rare in the early days of the colony. Myra turned to Jace, her expression soft. "Do you remember when you thought love was over for you?" she asked quietly. Jace chuckled, shaking his head. "I remember. I thought I'd be alone forever, surviving on this planet with only Dusty for company." "And now?" Myra prompted. "Now," Jace said, looking around at the bustling farm and the settlers, "I see that life is about more than just surviving. It's about growing, connecting, and building something lasting. And you helped me see that." Myra reached out, taking his hand. "We helped each other," she said. "That's what humans do best. We learn, we adapt, and we care for one another." As the night grew darker, the twin moons illuminated the farm in a gentle silver glow. The settlers began to leave, promising to return and continue learning from Jace and Myra's innovations. The farm was quiet again, but it no longer felt lonely. Jace and Myra stood together, looking over the thriving fields and greenhouses. The alien plants shimmered softly, the irrigation channels hummed, and the hover horses grazed peacefully. Red Mesa, once harsh and unforgiving, was now a place of hope and possibility. "You know," Myra said with a small smile, "humans can do incredible things when they work together. I think we're just getting started." Jace nodded. "Yes, and I want to face it all with you by my side." Myra leaned against him, a simple gesture filled with trust and love. "Always," she said. The next morning, a distant signal appeared on the farm's communication console. It was faint, pulsing with an unusual pattern. Myra's eyes widened. "This could be something important," she said. "Maybe even alien in origin. We should investigate carefully." Jace smiled, feeling excitement he hadn't experienced in years. "Then let's do it together." Over the following weeks, they began preparations. Myra studied the signal patterns, while Jace reinforced the farm's structures and improved the greenhouses. The settlers returned regularly, eager to help and learn, and the community around the farm grew stronger. Humans thrived not because of individual strength, but because of teamwork, ingenuity, and shared vision. One afternoon, Myra stood on the ridge, watching a group of settlers planting new crops. "Look at them," she said softly. "They're learning, adapting, and building their own success. This is what humans do. They inspire each other." Jace joined her, his gaze following hers. "And we've become part of something bigger, not just surviving, but leading, teaching, and creating a future." The twin moons rose once more, casting their soft silver glow across the plains. Jace and Myra stood side by side, hands entwined, hearts aligned. They had faced storms, isolation, and uncertainty, yet they had not only survived, they had thrived. Together, they had built a community, a farm, and a life that symbolized the strength of the human spirit. That night, as the winds whispered across Red Mesa and Dusty grazed quietly nearby, Jace and Myra sat outside, reflecting on the journey. They spoke of future possibilities, exploring other settlements, integrating new technology, and perhaps even reaching out to the mysterious origin of the signal. "I never thought life could feel this full," Jace said quietly. Myra smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "It's only the beginning. Humans are capable of so much, and together we can face anything." Jace looked out over the farm, the alien plants shimmering softly under the twin moons. He felt hope, pride, and love all at once. Red Mesa was no longer just a frontier. It was a place of possibility, discovery, and connection. Myra whispered softly, "We've proven something important, Jace. That humans can thrive anywhere as long as we work together, care for each other, and never give up." Jace nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "And we've shown it not just to ourselves, but to everyone around us. Humans are remarkable, Myra, and we've only just begun." The stars above twinkled, the moons shone brightly, and the farm lay peacefully in the valley below. Red Mesa, harsh and challenging as it was, had become a symbol of human resilience, ingenuity, and heart. And Jace and Myra, side by side, stood as living proof of what humanity could achieve when it embraced connection, collaboration, and love. For the first time, Jace understood that surviving was never enough. Life was meant to be lived fully, shared with others, and enriched by discovery, compassion, and the human spirit. And with Myra by his side, he knew that the future was limitless.